The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. Whether you're making a traditional roasted turkey or spicy turkey tacos, your go-to shrimp cocktail, or your first Cajun risotto, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace your traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
We've locked in low prices to help you save big store-wide. Look for the locked in low prices tags and enjoy extra savings throughout the store. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Welcome to Bite-Sized Bios. This is meant to be a mini-sode that will accompany HDTH. Every week, I will pick a person from history and dive into their lives. All right, welcome back to another episode of Bite-Sized Bios, BSB. This week, we are talking about Ellen Degeneres. We're going to find out as much as there is to find out about this woman. Is she happy? Is she sad? Is she mean? I hope we have the answer by the end of this. But before we get to that, because this is the mini episode of HDTH, we got to go back into time to this previous week's episode and maybe even, cover some things we didn't talk about or just mention some other stuff that I couldn't get to. And one thing that I did not get to before was just that I used to love jail shows, and I kind of still love jail shows. It's kind of a closet thing for me. I thought I'd share with you some of the jail shows that I like because there's they go a lot of different ways. First off, Locked Up. Locked Up is a great show. They do Locked Up Abroad. It's really just showing what happens when you guessed it, locked up. It's been around for years. I'm not even sure what channel it comes on now. I think all the episodes, all the good ones are on YouTube, so definitely check that out. Prison and jail has always fascinated me. I've never myself been, behind bars. I've been on a jail tour once in my life, and that was honestly about enough I needed. It looks just like it does on TV, if anybody's wondering. Another show, Orange is the New Black. Love that show. Actually read the book. Did I finish it? I don't think I finished it. I might have even mentioned it on this podcast. Was it Piper Kerman or whatever her name is? Like her actual journal or whatever that inspired this show. Not a journal. She's not Anne Frank, but I don't know. That's a good show. Another show, and the last show that I'll mention, I think, there's one more show that's just called Jail. I'm not even sure what channel that comes on, but it can be fulfilling sometimes. But the last show I mentioned, which I just think is wild, is called 60 Days In. If you've ever looked at it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, this might be your new addiction, man. It's like they put these people in. I hope I'm explaining this right. They put these people in jail, and let them, but they're not really in jail, right? And I think that if I remember correctly, it's been like a year or two since I watched it. They try to get the people in there to get them to snitch on the people, like the regular prisoners. And once the prisoners find out that they're not, actual prisoners, they usually kind of want to hurt them. It's this whole thing. So it's like they pick people and they put them in there. I don't feel like I'm explaining. Let me look it up because I really want people to understand what I'm saying. I feel like I'm not laying this out right. Yeah. Okay, so I got it. So basically, it's to what the bio says for IMDb says that in attempting to eliminate rival gangs, drugs, and corruption at their facilities, chief jailers are enlisting members of the public to help. And that sounds smart. Said no one ever. Building on the tremendous success of previous undercover operations in places like Clark County, Indiana, and Atlanta, there we go, probably Atlanta, Georgia, not Atlanta, Texas, they take law-abiding citizens and let them live among the general pop for 60 days to help expose the root of many problems. So basically, you're taking people into an underworld where snitching is a bad thing, and they're not even a part of that world, and being like, will you snitch? I'm telling you, it is worth your time. But that's about it. I have some prison escapes here I was going to share with you, just going to run through real fast. And then we're going to find out about some Ellen DeGeneres. So let's see. The main one that I thought was worth mentioning. Well, first we'll mention that Ted Bundy escaped jail twice before he was actually put into prison and then killed. As we said, his last meal was steak and eggs, but he chose not to have it. We mentioned that in this last episode. He jumped out of a second-story building one time, and he actually killed people while on the run during these prison escapes. So it's you got to be looking out for Ted because he's always trying to run. El Chapo, Joaquin Guzman, he escaped prison a couple times, usually through tunnels. He's back in prison right now. I think even his wife is in prison. But the one to me that I thought was always the most interesting is that there was an escape from Alcatraz, and they never found those guys. So, there's a chance that somebody actually did escape from Alcatraz. And I just thought that was an interesting story. There's not much to it. There's three guys. Two of them were brothers. And they broke through a vent in their cell. They each had different cells. There was actually another guy who was supposed to go, but he couldn't break his vent enough to get through, so they just left him. It's hard out here for a pimp. And so they broke through the vent and they climbed through the roof of the jail. And they climbed down the side, and they had a raft that was made of like 50 or something raincoats, and they just went off into the night, never to be seen again. And they love to say that they drowned, and maybe they did drown, but I just feel like that's just the authorities trying to hate on these guys for having some ingenuity, and being resourceful and saying, "Oh, you said this is an escapable prison? Hold my beer." But that's pretty much it. All I wanted to cover from last week's episode. I think it was good. The episodes are getting a little longer. I'm trying to get more information. I'm trying to find a way to keep you guys' attention throughout it. But I'm hoping that you guys are liking the content that I'm putting out here. But yeah, I don't think there's much more to say. The listens keep going up. I appreciate you guys. As always, head over to hdthappen.com if you want even more. You can go to the Twitter page. I have started to introduce what I call the no context history photo of the week, and I think it's just funny where I go and I find, whether it be through my research or just what I see throughout the week, just a wild. Because if you look back at the pictures in history, without context, a lot of it doesn't make sense. It makes sense when you know what they're doing or whatever happened after or whatever had come before. But if you just look at a picture in history with no context, it's a lot of times like, what was happening? And I just think it's funny. So that is on the Twitter page. I may even start to compile a list of them and put them back on the website as well. Who knows? I've only been doing this for about 2 or 3 weeks now. But yeah, so without further ado, as we're known to do, here's the episode. Ellen Degeneres was born on January 26, 1958, in a place called Metairie, Louisiana. Probably not Metairie. Metairie. I mean, it looks like Metairie. Metairie? I'm not sure. She was born to an insurance salesman and a working mother, and they divorced when she was a teenager. Her mother's name was Elizabeth Jane Betty, and her father's name was Elliot Everett Degeneres. A little known fact, at least to me, she has a brother who was also in the entertainment industry. His name is Vance. He's actually been, I'm not going to run his credits, but he's been around. He's been in a couple successful like bands, like for music. He's actually, I think he was inducted into the Louisiana Rock Hall of Fame, I think like 20 years ago, something like that. So yeah, doing this research, I learned I did not know she had a brother. And if you look at his picture, he looks like her as a guy, which she almost herself does. Shortly after the divorce, her mother married a guy named Roy Grusendorf. Right? He's a salesman as well. And old Betty Jane and Ellen, they moved with Grusendorf from New Orleans, where she was from, to Atlanta, Texas. I don't believe I mentioned she's from Metairie, Louisiana, which is, I think, outside of Louisiana or outside of New Orleans. She mentions in some interviews that she had spent a lot of time in New Orleans herself, Nolans, as the people call it. But they moved from there to Atlanta, Texas, and Vance stayed with his father. Funny thing about Atlanta, Texas, when I saw that, because you see this, like there's like Paris, like Tennessee or something like that. Like there's just all these different places that are just, it's not the real one, but you wonder how it got there. Why did they choose to call it Atlanta, Texas? Well, this was made that way because the people that settled Atlanta, Texas, came from Atlanta, Georgia. And so the town, I'll give you just a quick history, was established in 1872 when they built the Texas and Pacific Railway. And like I said, most of the people came from Atlanta, and they loved Atlanta so much that they wanted to name it also, Atlanta, Texas. Evidently, there's also an Atlanta, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Missouri. I had not known. I've only known of one Atlanta my whole life. But I just thought, when I saw that, I was like, Atlanta, Texas? What is that? But moving on, so her and her mom and old Grusendorf, they moved to Atlanta, Texas when she's about 13 years old. And the sad thing about her relationship with Grusendorf is he would actually end up molesting her in a couple years after that, which is pretty much on throughout high school. It seems like her mother had come down with a form of breast cancer, and so this guy, Grusendorf, used that as a way to be like, we need to check your breasts, for lumps and stuff like that, and among other things. Like I think they even said he tried to break down her door one time to get at her. Like it was a whole thing. So that was part of her life that I'm sure played a part mentally for her. She told her mom about this, but her mom would not believe it for another 18 years. And get this, she only believed her when she kept questioning her husband, and the story just kept changing. you know. And so then she's like, oh wow, she must have. I never understand how people just don't believe their kids. If your kid comes to you like that, why they wouldn't. And obviously, I mean, I haven't been in that situation. I can't speak for everybody, but geez, you know, like at least, I don't know, follow up, like really follow up. Don't just be like, hey, Grusendorf, did you do this? You know what I mean? Like, you know, maybe like start taking a better, you know, more watchful eye. That's all. That's what I would do. If I had a kid and I don't have children, that came to me and said so-and-so molested them, I would definitely ask. And if that person lies and I can't figure it out, but it's always going to be in the back of my head if they said that, you know. But moving on once again, so she graduates from Atlanta High School in 76. She moves back to New Orleans to go to the University of New Orleans, where she studies communication studies, but eventually drops out. I think she says it just wasn't for her. She finds a lot of things that end up not really being quote unquote for her. She did things like, I think she said she was a waitress at TGI Fridays. She was a house painter. What else did they say she did? She was a paralegal, I think, for a little bit. And then she finally kind of ends up getting into comedy towards the late 70s on into the early 80s. She does so in small places like coffee houses and small comedy clubs. And by 1981, she is the MC at Clyde's Comedy Club, Triple C, in New Orleans. She says her early influences were Woody Allen and Steve Martin, which I will say, no shade to Steve Martin. I love your acting. Man, I used to have one of your comedy albums. Not a fan. I'm just saying I'm not a fan. I don't know. Like I said, I love Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, so don't get me wrong. I'm a Steve Martin fan. And I even watched that show, his most recent one, Only Murders in the Building. Great show. Him and, what's the guy's name? Martin Short. Yeah. And I actually even have some of Steve Martin's books. Like, he writes, y'all. So, like, I mean, I can say this out of a little bit of love. I consume most of your other content, Steve Martin, but the 70s and 80s stand-up Steve Martin is not it. So in the early 80s, she begins to tour nationally, and I read a couple different places that they said either 84 or 82 she was crowned the funniest person in America by Showtime. I'm not sure which one it was. I saw both of them. Another big part in her career would be a couple years later when she was on Johnny Carson and actually got the old motion over to the couch, which was a big deal. I think it's kind of weird, not because she's a woman or anything, but just this whole, like, I don't know, if you're funny enough, I'll talk to you on national television. Like, I don't know, it's just a weird dynamic. But she ended up getting called over. She was the first female in the history of that show to actually get a call over to the couch. That was a big deal for her. So she would go on to star in a couple shows, kind of finding her way. Not star, I think be like co-stars of shows. I think she gets her first real chance at being a star of an actual show. I think she had one show canceled before. I can't remember the name of it. But when she gets this show, what was the year Ellen started? Let me be honest. Maybe they said it ran for 6 years. Let's see. It's so hard to search up her show because her show was her show, or her name was the same name as her show. It's like not much deviation. But so again, so in 1994 is what it's saying here. She gets this show, which was initially titled These Friends of Mine. And after the first season, they actually moved the title to her name, which we've talked about this. This happened with Oprah as well. It wasn't a scripted comedy, but it was the talk show that she was on was called like Good Morning Chicago or like AM Chicago or something like that. And after like a season or two, they were like, no, this is called Oprah. And I mean, that means you really put, your stamp on things. That's what you kind of want in this world. And so, yeah, it was very popular due to its observational humor. It was considered to be the female Seinfeld. And this is the show where she ended up coming out and letting people know that she was a lesbian, which I was actually talking with somebody today who we were talking about the whole coming out and was it that, serious or how it could be viewed through today's lens. And I think people really just forget because it's so homosexuality and just any sort of sexuality besides hetero is more prevalent in today's society, much more than it was 20 to 25 years ago. It just wasn't the way that it is now. And so you can really look at a situation like that and be like, it wasn't all that serious. But it's like, actually it was, to a lot of people. And that was so that the episode was called the Puppy episode in 1997, where she revealed that she was a lesbian. And it was a pretty big deal. Like I said, even some places, of course, it's not hard to guess. In Birmingham, Alabama, they refused to air the show. Those guys are just always on the wrong side of history. And because they did so because some of their advertisers were pulling out. This happened with a lot. This is what they actually say is the reason the show got canceled, is because once she came out, they did more, lesbian centric episodes. I wouldn't even say lesbian centric, but episodes that were more focused on sexuality. And the world just still wasn't there yet. It barely even is now with stuff like that. I mean, we're still having these conversations now, but we really have kind of, I mean, for someone who's, speaking for myself, who's grown throughout, I've watched these last 30 years because I've been living them, and you see just the differences. But that's beside the point. But they say that's why it ended up actually kind of getting canceled, is because the advertisers weren't loving the fact that where they were changing the subject matter of the shows. And they even say that they had a warning label on episodes where she might end up kissing another woman, or even talking about the fact that she might like other women. They had a warning label. Can you imagine? Like, warning. There might be some lesbian stuff. Like, like the 90s were wild. So that show gets canceled. And then she kind of bounces around. She does a couple movies. She was in this movie called Ed TV, which I saw when I was a kid. It's really, it was good when I was a kid. I think it's Matthew McConaughey, but before he became like, all right. But I think he had already done, you know what I like about high school girls. He had already done that, I think, but I don't know if he got an all right yet. But, so yeah, and then she ends up getting the show, the Ellen Show, actually. Well, she gets another show called The Ellen Show, which was another type of comedy, but it ended up getting canceled after one season. They say it was good, like it was like critically acclaimed, but the people didn't really love it. So I guess that's never. I mean, it's good in the long run, like, but not in the short term for cash dollars. So after that, like I said, she would do a couple movies, like I was mentioning, and then she would actually get her own show, the Ellen Degeneres Show. But before she even did that, she became the voice of Dory in Finding Nemo, which to me, to date, is my favorite piece that she's ever done. I don't know, that thing grows on you, honestly, because I was a little too old for Finding Nemo, honestly, when it came out. I remember because I had nieces and nephews who were into it, but I was young enough. I mean, I was still a kid, but I don't know. But she was funny in there, and then for it to come back in the sequel and to even have Finding Dory, it does. She is that. It's like it sews you into the fabric of society, really. Though that happened the same year. She did Finding Nemo and started the Ellen DeGeneres Show in the same year. So that's pretty much her. Like her whole, like, if you're gonna run it down, there's a lot of things that can be said about her. I think I do have a little bit more, but as far as like the linear path that is her, because the show ended like last year or something like that. We'll mention her personal life. She was actually in a relationship with the actress Anne Heck. I think it's Anne Heck, who actually just recently passed away. They were in a relationship for a few years. They weren't together anymore. And then she got with who she's with now, which is Portia de Rossi. Fun fact about her, that's not her real name. Portia de Rossi is not. I thought it sounded too cool. It sounded so cool, I had to figure out what you did in life to become Portia de Rossi. What she did was at the age of 15, just decide, I'm Portia de Rossi. I guess we're all Portia de Rossi. Her real name is like Amanda Lee Rogers, which sounds basic as I don't, so. But what I thought when I was reading this, I was like, what if we were what if we were stuck with the names that we chose for ourselves when we were 15? Because I have nicknames from high school. I have all that. But a small select few of people in the world use those to refer to me. But I couldn't imagine being 50, whatever, and being called by the name that I created in my bedroom after school in the 10th grade. But I suppose that happens to a lot of people. I mean, rappers and stuff like that, But that's beside the point. So they've been together for a long time. There's not much more I really wanted to mention about her. I wanted to get in there that there's in Atlanta, Texas, because that was just wild to me. I did not know. And there's in Atlanta, Louisiana, and all the above. I think the last thing that I really wanted to mention is just it's hard not to mention her without talking about the accusations of being kind of a mean boss, I guess, is a simple way to say it, but I don't know. I don't want to say that I called it and I knew, because I definitely didn't work there. But when you look at her, and she even kind of mentions it a little bit, it's like this whole like always happy, we're always dancing. The first time I watched her show, and I was like, why do we have to dance? Why does everybody have to? Why are we getting up and dancing? Don't force dance on people. That's mean too. That's oppression in its own way. So I knew something was off, but to see that she basically created a hostile working environment with bullying behavior. And when they did a whole investigation, Warner Brothers ended up I think 3 executives had to be kind of kicked out, or they resigned, or however they settled that. But yeah, and I don't want to posit because I was thinking this will be the last thing I think before we go ahead and end this episode, but it's not lost on me that, I don't know, you wonder what real relationship she had with Twitch, who, as I've written about, and who just, committed suicide and passed away. I believe it was last month. When you talk about the hostile work environment, and he had always this perceived positivity that was almost just through the roof, unbelievable. You don't believe that it's real, that it's there, and then you find out that it's really not there. And so it's almost the same thing of finding out that Ellen DeGeneres doesn't like to dance all the time, every day. It makes you wonder what was going on behind those closed doors. And I'm not saying that Ellen was responsible for his suicide. I'm just saying there's seems to be more than meets the eye when you look under all of this stuff. But yeah, I didn't want to end on a super just sad note. But this was the last part that I wasn't sure if I was going to put in. Not the hymn, but the whole thing of just because it was a big revelation when it came out that she was kind of mean. And it's like she's a person, she's a human. This shouldn't be. Everybody has that side of them. But yeah. All right, that was another episode of Bite Size Bios. Learned about Ellen DeGeneres. I was really struggling as to whether or not this could be an interesting episode. Only because, I don't know, maybe it's because I've lived this story. It's not new, or it's not interesting to me. But to hear her story and the way it all plays into everyday life, and the fact that, I didn't know she was molested, but what I found is, because I've read a lot of biographies, and this is not groundbreaking at all, but it is a lot of women have been molested. That's what you just see. I just read Viola Davis's Viola Davis's biography. She was molested. I believe Oprah said she was. Maya Angelou. I don't know why I'm just listing black women, but they were all. You look back and they all have some sort of abuse story. I don't know why we're getting on this tangent. We're gonna go ahead and get off of it. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. As always, if you like what you heard, give us a like and subscribe wherever you find podcasts. It really helps the pod grow. As always, if you want to give us 5 stars, that's great. With a happy little review. If you want to give us 2 stars and tell us why you didn't want to give us 5 stars, I'm all for that as well. I think that's all we have for you this week. We'll see you in a couple days with the next HDTH.
The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. Whether you're making a traditional roasted turkey or spicy turkey tacos, your go-to shrimp cocktail, or your first Cajun risotto, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace your traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
We've locked in low prices to help you save big store-wide. Look for the locked in low prices tags and enjoy extra savings throughout the store. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.